Hey guys, my name is Liz Vaughn. Some of you may know me from previous classes, so welcome to 699. This is all the way from Ecuador, but I just wanted to give you a few tips about class. So if you see me glancing over, I'm just looking at my notes. So first and foremost, you're in good hands because you have a really good advisor and you have a really good professor. So you guys obviously know that they care and they're really competent. So they're going to have your back, so they're taking care of you, and just kind of talking to other people that are in other programs, that's not always the case. So it's nice to know that the people that you're working with honestly want you to graduate. They want to see you get that degree. So that's probably the best news you can take today. A couple of other good news is that thousands of people, like tens of thousands of people, have written the capstone and they've completed it and they've graduated. So although it's new to you and it feels like you're just kind of blazing down new trails, it's been done before, so it's okay. And last but not least, a really good news is that you have a ton of resources. I was overwhelmed, and I'm sure that you probably feel like that a little bit, but the resources are overwhelming in a good way. Literally, one of your best resources is going to be our professor. He's extremely knowledgeable. He's done this class. That's why Kevin always gets him to come here. Your peers, a lot of times just bouncing ideas off of people is going to be great. I know that people in my class were just really helpful when you got stuck, and they're really encouraging. The Blackboard material, oh my goodness, especially the outline that he gives you when you write your paper, use that. Like, all the stuff on Blackboard is just phenomenal. You also have the Writing Center, and I sent all of my stuff to them. You also have Grammarly, which I'm sure the professor will talk about. It was something that my mom told me about as an educator and just made a huge difference in my writing. It took care of a lot of stuff that otherwise would have been really difficult. Then you, of course, you have the library. They helped pull a lot of resources for me. You have YouTube and stuff like, I'll talk a little about a little bit later, but doing your stats, trying to figure out how to write a literature review. That was awesome. And then finally, a lot of survey services, and he'll go over this in class, but I used Google Forms. I thought it was really easy, and I didn't have to pay anything. So if you have to choose between paying one thing, SurveyMonkey versus Grammarly, I would probably say go for the Grammarly. So for the bad news about this class, it can overwhelm you. I remember finishing the first day with him and feeling like it was very overwhelming, and I think our class was sort of acting like it was the apocalypse. So you can get overwhelmed. And the bad news is that if you don't plan, there's really no shortcut to this. Like I said, thousands of people have done it before, but it does require a lot of hard work. Also, some more bad news is that life will keep on going on. So most of us have full-time jobs, have families, and those aren't just going to go to the side because you have a paper, which really comes down to that planning. And then last but not least, depending on what your strengths are, you may get really stuck on one chapter. Some people really struggled with statistics, other literature review. So kind of having that self-reflection of to where you are now, what is your strength in writing is going to help you. And just to finish up, a couple of quick tips that I wrote down I thought were really helpful. Just read the resources in Blackboard first and foremost. A lot of times I had questions that when I went through, I just sat down and I printed out everything and killed a lot of trees, and I just read through and said, okay, this is what you need to do. The professor he'll answer your questions, but I think it's really kind of beneficial that we read it first and then we ask kind of for clarification. When I was writing my paper, I found that it was a lot easier to measure the perceived effectiveness of something versus the effectiveness on it. So if you're kind of struggling with that, maybe look into that. I created a calendar and I just had dates, and I said by this date I want to send it to the Writing Center, by this date I want to have this chapter done. And you have a timeline for you, but if you can try to bump that timeline up, it's just going to give you that leeway. It's just going to give you a little bit more flexibility, especially since I worked ahead because I had other things that were going on, and that meant that I could get my paper back within a day or two of the professor looking at it, which is just a huge advantage. Make sure your survey fits your thesis, so really getting that RA knocked out ahead of time. If you have your RA approved and you already started collecting data by the time your class meets for the second time, you're going to be able to use that class time just much more effectively. That's what at least I found. And if you get frustrated with your paper, which you will, I really want to throw my computer across the floor a couple of times, just continue to work on your paper, but do something else. So jump to another chapter, read an article, fill out the forms. Like there's a lot of extra work you have to do. So just be doing something that's working towards getting that goal. Personally, I struggled with a literature review, so I YouTubed Get Lit, which is a literature review written by someone at Texas A&M. And that was great. Many people that struggle with stats and looking at something like Fisher's exact test, all those things, if you go on to YouTube, it'll go step by step. I'm sure by this point you've all made it through a lot of classes, so you save your stuff and you do that. But just having it in a couple places, have it on your hard drive, have it on your computer in case something were to get lost. And overall, this paper is just a checklist. So every single chapter you write is just one paper. And, you know, we've all written papers, so it's literally just like, okay, I'm just going to knock out these papers, look at that rubric, go through line by line and say, did I fill this objective? I've talked to other people in classes, and their professors sort of say, hey, you're a master's student, show me what you got, write this paper, and go from here. And that's not what our professor does. He really, really lays out, wants us to have success, and says, let me show you what I'm looking for. So know his strikes, so know what he's looking for. He is one of your graders on it. So if he goes to the effort of giving you that feedback, just make sure you pay attention to it and everything. So I know I gave you a ton of information, but I survived it, and it's fine. And honestly, with all the resources you have, you should be able to do great. Just don't procrastinate, and best of luck. So enjoy, and I will be thinking of you while I'm in Ecuador. So.